everyone, and welcome to episode 89 of the Home Games Podcast. I'm Yazeed, and this is Joseph.
Hello, I'm Joseph, and today is August 29th, 2021. I was going to say the name of the day, and then I was going to say the number, and I ended up pausing. But today is Sunday, August 29th, 2021.
Oh, that's what you meant by the day, the name of the day.
Yeah, the day, I guess you could also say.
I was like, a couple days ago was International Dog Day, but
oh yeah,
that's like the name of the day. I didn't think today was like an international day.
International Sunday, and today we're talking about Squish stuff.
That's right.
Yazeed made some more Squish changes after a shocking discovery that we'll talk about later.
That's right.
Also,
I'll start this thing off.
Yeah.
I put out PR this morning.
Yeah.
With updates to the README, which means that people can actually use Squish.
For Squish, the core game engine of home games is what Squish is. You put up a pull request. It has some documentation. It has some fixes.
There's a lot of documentation.
It has a lot of documentation.
That's right.
I skimmed it, didn't read it fully.
You just looked at it, you're like, that's documentation.
Well, it's like, yeah, what the fuck is this guy going to teach me? You know? Which is, maybe me being a dick, but whatever. I was skimming it. I was like, okay, this seems fine, and I'll actually review it later and kind of add to it. But yeah. What were you gonna say about?
No, that was it. I added documentation. It's based off of your PR.
Okay, yeah. So for background, yeah, you put up the pull request 2 weeks ago to convert Squish to TypeScript.
Yes.
And we approved it, and it was like, okay, the tests are failing. It's probably because of something. But after we merged it and I tried to get it working with Home Games Core and Home Games Web, just as a library, update, bump the version and keep it going, realized it didn't work. So I made some changes in the way that, I'm not a TypeScript person. I basically Googled what TypeScript exports look like and copied it. So figured out some ways to basically make those libraries available to Home Games Core and Home Games Web without updating those to TypeScript or doing anything weird. Got that working, and then you made some more changes on top that I haven't actually looked at yet.
The changes are quite minor. Mostly, I realized that I had done a disservice because this is like in the weeds, but coordinates 2D isn't an array of numbers like I originally made it. It is an array of tuples. Sorry, it's an array of tuples where both elements of the tuple are numbers.
Yeah, I think that's stupid because that's not actually.
Huh?
No. You're right. That is what it is. I'm not saying you're stupid. I'm saying you're right. That is how it's structured. And I think if you look in the code, there's ways that there's times that I make hacks because I think it's a 1D array, just a list of numbers, and other times I know it's a 2D array or it's a list of tuples, which is just a lists of two. I think it's. What do you think? I think it's kind of silly to have a list of tuples. It seems very. The idea is that it's XY points.
Yeah. I actually think it's okay. When I was writing up the documentation, it is when I actually caught it because I was reading the documentation, looking at the code side by side, and I was like, "There's a mismatch between what this is supposed to be and what I had typed it as, like literally like TypeScript typed it as, not like typed it." Yeah. Where I realized that what we define as the coordinates 2D is actually literally the coordinates of the vertices of the thing. And so keeping it as a tuple, I think is better. I think it's better. I also pointed out in there that they should try to use shapes util where possible because that builds shapes for you automatically and you don't need to worry about like the mechanics of it all.
That builds rectangles.
And triangles.
Yeah, but there's no... I don't think anything uses triangles.
Yeah. But
basically shape utils is, hey, give me some arguments for common shapes and I'll build you the XY list for that. And I get what you're saying. I do think the list of XY makes sense in this thing that we have today where essentially there's not much of a separation between you, the developer, inserting parameters into this game node and making it do something and the actual representation in the array, the actual squished version. And I think a game developer ultimately shouldn't even have to think about an array when they're making a list or they're making a shape. They should just be able to say, give me a rectangle with these coordinates, give me a triangle, however it's represented. I don't give a fuck. But I think what I mean is in the long run, people shouldn't be constructing lists of 2D or constructing lists of XY coordinates.
I think that it's okay if we give them most shapes, but if people want to make a very like an irregular polygon, then they should be able to do that.
But I guess I'm saying even then, if they just conceptually, it's just say I'm making a line and I want to say XY to XY to XY. Literally, this is a list of numbers. But the fact that it's stored as a list of numbers, that shouldn't even come into someone's head. They should just be worried about, okay, I'm giving this function XY, 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 and it list whatever. It should just be kind of abstracted more, I guess.
Yeah. That I get as well. I mean that was like the I agree with that, but also that was like the main change. It was just the most like a typing fix there.
Cool.
I think there was maybe something else that was really minor. Oh, I need to go through and fix all of them, but I think on click always passes the player who clicked. Excuse me. Just hiccup right into the mic.
It's all good.
And then I need to go through and update the documentation in TypeScript for that. I think maybe I updated it in one spot where I was trying to explain what this click does, and I was like, what is the argument? Because in my definition for it, it was just called arg and it had a type of any, when it really should be a player of type player def. So
yeah, real type scriptification, putting the type in TypeScript.
Yeah. Just that was like what was cleaned up there. But yeah, the README was like the big piece. I tried to explain as much as I could what all the exports were, give example calls were relevant. I came up with terminology. I don't know if you read that, the first class.
Yeah, I saw you using like tech words, and I was like, oh, he's going in, and I'm gonna have to like come back and read this.
Yeah, I did. I was like, it is an instance variable, it's a class variable. I was like, I'm just gonna explain this in shorthand, and then later on we can come back through and link a Wikipedia page or something that explains it.
Well, actually, yeah, I was thinking because it's like a blob of documentation, and it's kind of like from the top, Squish is a function that does this, and unsquish is a function that does this, and it's very specific to, because home games needs to compress the data sent over. It's like, yeah, but I think there should be the sections. It's kind of like what I was talking about last time about the latent style, different levels of documentation. There should be a very high level. Squish is responsible for constructing game nodes out of simple whatever, a little bit deeper. It is represents objects as lists of numbers, and you can go beyond that and say it's an unsigned list of 8-bit integer, whatever. You can kind of keep going further than that, but I think it's kind of one of the things I've been thinking about is how do we document something well when our audience is anybody. It's like, who are you talking to? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think your stuff made sense for a developer, which
Yeah, that was like that. I think that might be fine as an initial pass. Yeah, you're right. We should add drill downs and stuff like that. There's you can write HTML as your documentation. I used like the traditional like .md style where it's just like tilde and 2 stars gives you bold and stuff like that. Like I basically just use that documentation. But yeah.
I'm not proposing any changes. I'm just saying, in the grand scheme of things, that is something I'm thinking about. Is how do we provide documentation that is easy to parse and easy to access, and you can get what you need, and then what you need can kind of vary on who you are. Because I guess we watched a video before this. I wanted to show you because it was a dude who made. Using Unreal Engine 5, he remade Rust, the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer map, and some of the multiplayer components of Call of Duty. And he was showing just how the Unreal Engine works in this kind of drag and drop interface, and you can write code and all this kind of stuff. And I guess I was just, as someone who doesn't know what a game engine looks like or what tools should look like to be accessible and stuff, it was kind of an eye-opening thing of, holy shit, this looks easy. But for someone who is not already like a developer, I don't know how easy that looks, and I guess I'm trying to think of what that would look like for someone, and how we can make something like that for someone that's not an intimidating Unreal IDE, and it's like, oh, Squish is just what's an object, starting there and then going into unsigned 8-bit integers.
I don't think I ever explained that it's an unsigned 8-bit integer, because I was like, I don't even think that's true anymore because the Unicode changes.
So the trickiness there is that it is always an unsigned 8-bit array of integers, but the way I store some things, I'll split it up between multiple bytes. So instead of a 1 byte thing, some will be 2 or 3 bytes long, and then I kind of parse them in 3 byte chunks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always an 8-bit integer array. I just do weird shit with it.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, I was like, I don't remember. I remember you talking about Unicode meeting a change from being 8-bit, and I was like, I'm not going to say 8-bit integer then, because that might not be the case. I think I just described it as an array of integers as the outcome of Squish.
Yeah, which is true.
Yeah.
But that's the constructor in JavaScript. It's like the ugliest constructor name ever. It's like new uint 8, whatever the fuck it is. Yeah. It's super incomprehensible. But yeah, that's what that is. And speaking of that, I made another change similar to like the way that we handle player IDs. Mm-hmm. Or sorry, not player IDs, game node IDs. Because it was another Squish change where basically in the draw app, which I was kind of fucking with, the way that we do drawing in the draw test today, you're not actually drawing lines. It's every time you click and drag, you're actually making a bunch of small blocks. And each of these are game nodes. And each game node has an ID, and that's how the client is aware of how you clicked on something, and it remembers the ID that you clicked on to send a callback.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you click and drag and you do more than 256 blocks on the page, which happens quick because just that, right? It loses track of the IDs because it only had 1 byte for the node ID. So the maximum was 255. So on the 256th, it would lose track of everything. Game would shit its pants. So I made a change. I'm just saying this because it's an example of how I do something weird with 8-bit integers. I made a change to basically support up to 10,000 by splitting that into 2 bytes. And so I take the number as a string, cut it in half, and put that string in both. So my max is 9999. You know, the char code for 99, the char code for 99, piece them together as a string, it's 9999. So using 2 things that max out at 256, I can represent 10,000, which is kind of like a weird tech boy optimization.
This man knows his powers of 2. That is pretty good and pretty cool. And yeah, I didn't get into that as far as documentation was. I was mostly concerned with the usage, just like explaining if you call like shapes utils.rectangle and you pass in these arguments, what are you going to get?
It's funny because I was like I said, I was skimming over the stuff and I saw the documentation that was there before, and it was just the most fuck it thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Where I basically in the REPL, like the node CLI, I just imported Squish, ran some things, squish and unsquish, and then copied and pasted all of the shit into the README. It was like, this, you'll figure it out. Fuck you, you'll figure it out.
I honestly didn't know there was anything in there until I opened that file up and I was like, do I keep this? What is this?
This guy's a madman.
I just left it. I did not keep it. That's gone now forever, hopefully, once it gets merged in. But yes, that's what I spent most of my week with doing, was writing documentation and furthering my using Mocha for writing unit tests.
Nice. Yeah, well, I was kind of all over the place. I think I had a weird earth-shattering moment. Not quite earth-shattering, but basically on our last episode.
Chilling the soil.
When you mentioned basically that you wanted to do the TypeScript stuff for Squish and for Home Games Core and all this other stuff. Home Games Web.
I wanted web. I told you can do core.
Okay. So I basically realized that you have these tasks that I was already thinking I would do. So then my whole plan for the rest of the year was kind of like, well, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
And then I kind of started thinking about just ways I can improve stuff or kind of work alongside what you're doing without stepping on what you're doing. And basically realized there's a pretty big distinction that I wasn't thinking about before, but the conversion of TypeScript and rewriting the code. So just converting the TypeScript, is not easy, but it's just fairly formulaic. It's just take the thing and convert it. Don't fix it. Don't clean it. Just convert it.
Yeah.
And in my head, I guess I would like to rewrite before we convert to TypeScript because it would just make it easier to convert to TypeScript with cleaner code. So we can talk about that or whatever. But basically just decided I would start making incremental rewrites to Home Games Core stuff since that's what I'm going to eventually convert to TypeScript, but I want to rewrite first. So anyway, basically realized there's that difference, and the kind of timeline in my head of when stuff should be converted to TypeScript is kind of different now because it's actually different work than rewriting code, which takes a lot fucking longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I rewrote part of Home Games Core, just the entry stuff, the way that it works.
Yeah.
and I'm about to put up a pull request for it.
Oh.
And you will, it'll be the first code review I put up where I want you to review it.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Because normally it's just like, fuck it, I'll put it up there. Yazeed, FYI, fuck you, merge the master.
Merged it. I just get a notification. This is a PR for me to review, and then later, like an hour later, it's been merged, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah. I must be hard to work with. Like, I just realized.
Honestly, like, I think that if I didn't know you well, I would be like, this man just doesn't give a fuck. But I know that's the opposite. I know you're a crazy person.
Thank you. That's why this works.
Yeah. Sorry, did you want to?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say one thing. I was gonna say is, damn, I keep hitting this thing. I think that there is a fundamental difference between rewriting it and turning it to TypeScript. I don't know. I don't know where I stand on the converting it first or rewriting it first. So the reason I'm saying that is if you type it first, then you know what everything is supposed to be to still work, right? Mm-hmm. But if you just rewrite it all, you might change that anyway. So I guess it doesn't really matter.
Well, yeah, I guess I'm thinking of a situation where you're in Home Games Web and you're trying to basically figure out how all of it works to type everything and get everything structured correctly. And you run into some code that's like, why the fuck does this do this?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I need someone to help whatever. And ultimately, it doesn't even need to be structured like that. It just needs to be rewritten. Mm-hmm. So then you can have a clear mental model of going in of what everything needs to do and what type everything is. Mm-hmm. And I think the way that it is right now is that you've converted Squish to TypeScript. Mm-hmm. You're working on the TypeScriptification eventually of Home Games Web. Those ones are probably, one's already done. The other one is going to happen. And that's probably fine because Home Games Web is like 1,200 lines of code. That's it.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah.
Home Games Core is a big old mess.
Yeah, that's why when you were like, oh, do you want to do core and web? I was like, no, you can do core, fam. I'll do web.
Yeah. Yeah, and so because that code is a mess, I would actually argue that one should be rewritten before it should be converted to TypeScript. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first step I did, where essentially Home Games Core is responsible for a few things on startup. This is the part that I refactored and redid. It needs to know, are you interested in connecting to homegames.link? So you can have that whole redirect stuff working. Do you want a DNS record created for you? So instead of just redirecting to your local IP address, it actually is a actual DNS alias, which is really only in service of the next thing, which is HTTPS. Mm-hmm. So it has these kind of three things, and they're all different actions, and there's kind of different checks it needs to do when you're doing any of them, and then it needs to start the server with all this information that it has.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, I don't have a lot of code discipline in this stuff because I don't give a fuck. Like, it's not that I don't give a fuck. It's that, like, it's been the problem with me for this whole time, which is that I have a low bar for quality, and I'm just trying to get shit out and done.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't that. And so basically in this particular thing, I thought about it like a workflow. There's different steps. There's prerequisites to other steps and kind of like dependencies of steps. And I way over-engineered this thing because it's really just 3 if conditions and a game start server, whatever. So rewrote that stuff. It went from like 300 lines of code to 80.
Nice.
So that should be nice. And I think that's always nice when you remove more lines than you add. And I think we'll see a lot of those with Home Games Core because a lot of it is bullshit. Mm-hmm. But I'll put that up, and it's kind of just, here's how everything starts, and it's clean. And I think that's really one of the most important things to make clean is the entry point of your code.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going, and it works, and I'll put up that pull request.
And, are you making it in with Squish.js, like the TypeScripted Squish.js, or are you making it with older Squish?
I'm using older Squish still because we talked about it before, but also with the Squish TypeScript stuff, since you cleaned up the way that we do like, game node.node because it has an internal node, mm-hmm. and now it's just game node dot whatever property instead of .node dot property, which broke some of the it just broke backwards compatibility on Home Games Core. So we need to fix that stuff. So basically, instead of dealing with any of that, I just use the old version still. And it's just the entry point. There's no actual game stuff changes, so the Squish interactions aren't even touched.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. Let me see what's next on my notes. Oh, okay. Did you have anything else before I talk about shapes?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna go in on shapes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Be a hot topic. No, it's not really that big of a thing. I guess I just wanted to mention, since I kind of lost what I thought what I was going to do for the rest of the year, I've kind of just been looking for stuff to do. And one of those I thought would just be going back to the drawing stuff, which is what I was talking about earlier, where I think one of the most simple things people would want to use this for is like a shared whiteboard. Just not in terms of the actual game, but just the actual functionality, just a shared board to put shit on, which we have. But when you're drawing lines and circles and rectangles, like, you want these things to be available and easy to use, just, and we don't have any of that kind of shit except for rectangles. And so I was thinking a prerequisite for me making anything interesting with a drawing function would be adding shapes.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I still don't understand math very well. Because
I relate to that.
I guess so what I just wanted to do was add circles, just very basic circles. And I've tried this before, hit a wall with the math and gave up. Said, fuck it, no circles this year. But secretly, I want circles still.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, what's the most basic thing I can do, the most basic interface for a circle, which is give me an XY of the circle, which is the center, and a radius, where that radius is a percentage. Everything that all the numbers that you pass to a home games thing are a percentage of the screen. So I wanted to start at...
Yo, can you make a note on my... Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but can you make a note on the Squish PR so that I include that somewhere?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Or no, just be like, for more information, go to the 18th minute of the 89th episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
No, but so... shit, what was I saying?
Given the center and then the radius, which is a percentage of the screen.
Right. So, for example, if I wanted a circle in the center of the screen, I would say it starts at the 40x, the 40y, and it has a radius of 20. So that way it goes from 40, 40 to 60, 60. Perfect circle. And the math on that is pretty easy when every screen is a square.
Yeah.
It's not easy when the screen can be any size with any aspect ratio, because you have to... There's not hard, or not easy, but simple math that is involved in figuring out. It's some function of the X and Y of the total screen that you use to figure out what 10% would be within any of that rectangle.
Yeah.
But basically just banging my head against that shit. I have circles going, but there's a bug somewhere in my radius calculation, and then I realized there's also a bug in my XY translation coordination or coordination translation or coordinate translation, whatever the fuck.
Coordinate translation?
Yeah, coordinate translation. Jesus. When I take the XY of a game node and I say, here's the original raw XY of where this thing should be, give me the coordinate that I need to actually put it onto this screen. And this screen depends on whose screen it is, because it could be a phone or whatever. And so I tried just very simple, like, give me a circle whose center is at 0, 0. And 0, 0 is actually a fucked with number too, because we have a bezel on the edge of this thing. So the 0, 0 is actually slightly in on the edge of the screen, not the bezel.
Yeah.
And that wasn't working. I was like, oh, fuck, is any of this math right? Oh, God. Because it was all off. And so I started losing faith in all the rectangles. I just like don't know how any of the coordinates are working. So that's my next shit, to just like really figure that out and get it going after I get this index, or the entry point cleanup stuff, the pull request out for that. I'm going to go back into the math and make it cleaner and easier to use and make sure I know how it works.
Okay.
Because right now I'm just like, I'm looking at my own code like, who the fuck wrote this?
Who wrote this? The GitHub comment says it was me. It was a different me. When you do that, if you make any changes that need the documentation to be updated, you should. Or if you make any discoveries that are like, oh, this would be good for other people to know too, you should include that in the README.
Well, yeah, like I'm going to basically use your documentation as a starting point for me to add and change and whatever stuff.
Yeah.
But like I said, that documentation, when I actually read it, will be helpful, because it'll give me like the best representation of how your brain parsed my code.
Yeah.
And how it works to a person who's not me. Because you know what I mean? It's like you could say whatever, but like when you document shit and you're like getting into the nitty gritty, that's really it. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Okay. I don't remember how deep into the explanations I got, but yeah, I mean, let me know too if there's anything that you would want or take out from there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to be adding into like the shape utils for that then?
Yeah, I added a new shape type. Well, shape types already existed of circle and line.
Yeah.
But they weren't actually used. So yeah, the change there is essentially in Squish, I also need to send along the type of a node, because at the moment we kind of just have this loose thing of checking properties on a game node. If it has an asset, render an asset. If it has a color, pretend that there's going to be a stroke involved and it's going to have coordinates. Like it just makes assumptions about other properties based on some properties, and it's a really weird, wishy-washy way of knowing what the fuck is going on. So
yeah,
what I really need to have is some way for you to define a node as an asset node.
Yeah.
And it has an asset. It has coordinates and whatever. And you also need a way to represent like a text node and actually tell the client that it's a text node, not just a node with text.
Yeah.
Or a node with an asset and text.
Yeah. You may want to pull apart game node then in Squish. Sorry, I'm gonna lift this up a little bit. You may want to pull out the game node in Squish and pull out the types of game nodes in Squish, like asset, shape, and text. Make those their own, and then take away the lowercase g game node, like the underlying game node, which is just the internal game node, because that's exposed as well.
But we always need that. The only reason that exists is because we can't just provide like a pure constructor of a game node, because we need to wrap some property in that listenable shit. Like we basically, if you have just a asset constructor without calling the game node internal game node stuff, you would need a way to say to basically intercept the constructor and say, I know I'm instantiating this, but actually return a wrapped listenable version of this. You can't do that. You in the constructor, right? New game node.asset is giving you a game node.asset, but what you actually need is a thing that can be listened to. So in the constructor of game node.asset, there is no like this dot wrap around me, because this is all there is. You know what I mean? You can't say like return listenable me.
Yeah, wait. Yeah, but we don't call, when you make a new shape, you don't also then call game node on that shape. Lowercase g game node shouldn't. That's like the underlying what it is. What I'm saying is, if we don't expose that, you still have access to like shape assets, stuff like that. So they have to go through one of those entry points, basically.
So you're just saying don't let people know there's a game. I guess.
Yeah, don't let people know that there's an underlying game node that holds all of that information, because not all of that information is going to display. If you shove everything into a game node, what happens? Is it display an asset, a shape, and text?
Yeah. Well, there's fucked logic on the client that's just like, I got a chunk of data. I'm going to check if it has text. I'm going to check if it has coordinates. I'm going to check it, whatever. And the only real type logic is basically implied in the if conditions, because if it has this property, don't check this other one. That's the most clear it is.
I see.
So what I need is the client to be able to say, what is this thing? Before I look at any of the properties, what is this thing? And it'll say, I'm text, I'm an asset, I'm a whatever, and then it opens up the client to be able to prioritize renders for different stuff as well.
Yeah. Oh, but then if we're going to do that, then you don't need a game node that has everything. You need a game node that is a shape, is a asset, is a text game node.
So the top level game node is that.
Yeah.
And it tells the internal game node what type it is.
Yeah.
And the internal game node is just a node, because that's kind of everything essentially extends node. So it's just really getting a type number in there. Like it's just, I guess I don't see why we would need to change that stuff. You're still just getting. No,
I'm not saying change anything. I'm saying in Squish we currently export out lowercase g game node, which is the listened wrapped internal game node.
We shouldn't even do that now.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, but we do expose that. I didn't know why we do that, but we do that right now. So I'm saying is like, we don't, right, because I had to write documentation for that, what that is, and I was like, that is like a very large chunk of the documentation is just explaining what lowercase g game node is.
Well, that's valuable documentation. I just like no developer will use it or have to use it.
Yeah.
But I suppose,
if you're gonna type lock stuff, then there is no need for anybody to ever know what all the assets are at once, and they don't need to know that a game node lowercase g would, like an internal game node, is really untyped in its raw state.
Yeah, there's a gnat flying around your head.
Yeah,
it's really off-putting to me.
It's fine. He got it.
Did I?
No, I don't know.
Fuck it. It escaped my. Oh, there he is.
Okay, it's not like, listen, I can't see. I don't know what's going on.
I got him.
Yeah, I don't know, but that was my only thing, because then we can change the documentation to simplify it a little bit.
Okay.
Because then we can put more emphasis on like, what does the shape take in? What
Right.
does the shape output? Right. Because right now most of my documentation is locked up in the like internal game node explanation.
So basically, you're saying we should make the barrier between what a developer needs to know about and how the guts work. We should have that more clear.
Yeah.
And the guts are internal game node.
Yeah.
That what you need to know is this is a shape.
Yes.
You don't need to know how its properties are listened to. You just need to know it's a shape.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that would be my thing. Yeah, a lot of my documentation is like, here's an internal game node, here's all of the possibilities.
Which is valuable.
I mean, it is valuable, but if no one needs to know what all the properties are all at once, then they should be able to look and say, like, this is a shape. Here's what a shape takes in. Here's what a shape does. I think it'd just be easier for people to understand too.
Yeah.
Because I think right now, literally, I start off with like, here's lowercase g game node. Here's all the information. And then I was like, a shape is that, but like
this
specifically.
subset of these
Yeah. Or at least that's what I think I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll go in and tear that shit up. I'll tell you you're wrong.
Please do. Yeah. I'm okay if I missed or misunderstood something or something like this.
Well, no, I mean, whatever. You definitely get it enough to talk about it. That's.
I don't know if I get it enough to talk about it. I do talk about it, but
yeah. Well, I wrote it and I don't get it enough to talk about it then. So no one could talk about home games. It's over. End of the podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to talk about too.
I feel like I did with the type stuff I was just mentioning, and I had something else I wanted to say. Oh, the whole reason I'm doing that is because now that I'm changing the way that shapes work, I'm adding more than just rectangles. The coordinates 2D is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to be able to tell the client to read it differently. Because right now it's looking at coordinates 2D and assuming it's a list of X, Y's.
Positions, yeah.
But when it's a circle, it's going to be 3 values: the X center, the Y center, and the radius.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to get that same list of data and read it different.
Yeah.
Right? So it needs to know the type, which is just 1 extra byte in each node encoded in the list.
Yeah. It's interesting because we actually have 2 different typed definitions. We have the TypeScript definition of what things are, and then we have the Squish definition of what things are.
And there's the real definition in the middle, bro. There's 3 sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the West Side.
Oh shit, that would have been good. Let's redo this. Start over. Intro.
Hello everyone, welcome to
No, that's all I had. That was it. Just the Squish stuff. Your stuff didn't work, and now it does, kind of.
Woo.
And rewriting shit and figuring out what I'm doing with my life and making a game.
That makes sense. I did want to ask you about backwards compatibility, though.
Yeah.
Do we care at this point if something is backwards compatible? Because it feels like this TypeScript change is huge, and maybe things older than it don't need to be compatible.
So you'll notice if you go through all of our versions of every package that we have, the versions are always less than 1.0.
Yeah.
Nothing is officially ready yet, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid of marking anything as ready because it'll never be ready. See what I'm saying?
Okay.
So I guess what I'm loosely telling you is, yeah, that's fine because we're not even at 1.0 yet, and fuck all the developers because it's just us.
Yeah.
But in theory, I have this weird goal, this weird fantasy about home games, because I love the versioning stuff. I love that you can go back in history and then back in time. And something really makes me excited about the idea of using the newest version of Squish available in 10 years and being able to still play a game made 10 years ago with it. I think that's technically interesting.
Yes.
And I want to keep that going.
Uh-huh.
But I fully understand that it's mostly just me wanting something and it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So fuck it. It's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Short answer, fuck it.
Well, what I was trying to get at was like, kind of like what you're saying about like nothing is version 1.0 yet.
Right.
The TypeScript change is probably one of the biggest overhauls that we're gonna do.
I would say the rewrite is going to be a larger overhaul, and
I mean, that's like a rewrite of how it works mechanically. But like the TypeScript change also changes like how it gets compiled, how it gets executed. Like that changes it on like a fundamental level of what we're writing versus what a user is consuming and using.
It certainly updates the build process, and it changes. It adds features to our code base, not necessarily the product.
Yes.
It adds features for developers.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I'm not trying to argue that the change isn't significant or anything. I guess I'm just thinking in my head, I guess what you're asking is what's 1.1.
No, what I'm asking is with these TypeScript changes, right? And do we need to, it's what we were talking about earlier, where you were saying, right, like you can delete no.no.children, or we could just make it so that if there is no like no.children, we fall back on no.no.children.
Yeah, basically making a backwards compatible change in home games.
Yeah, what I was trying to get at is like, do we need to do that now, or can we say like from this version forward it's going to be backwards compatible, but everything up to this version would say is like lost to time? I know you hate that.
I hate that.
I know, and I like it.
The change in this case is very specifically, it is no longer node.node.
Yeah.
And that is something that can be checked for in a backwards compatible. If this property exists, then do this. And if not, then pretend it's the old thing.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But like I said, I know it doesn't really matter. And so if in my head, it's like spend 10 minutes trying to fix those if statements. And if everything works still and you can do it with the new version of Squish and the unTypeScript version of Squish, perfect. Mm-hmm. If it's hard, I'm not gonna be a dick about it. Mm-hmm. You know, whatever.
I see.
Because we have videos of things.
Yeah.
Which document the old shit in a way that is probably more accessible and helpful than actually just having it preserved for you to come and play it in some way. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever.
Okay. I guess my final question is this coming 2 week, we're gonna call it a sprint, and I hate it. Mm-hmm. I heard those gurgles.
Sorry. A lot of coffee today. A very acidic situation.
What are you going to target for these 2 weeks?
So for me, I'm going to take the pull or the draft changes that I currently have, rewriting the entry point for Home Games Core, cleaning that up and putting out a pull request, reviewing your documentation, and letting you know just whatever we can change and whatever, all that kind of stuff. And then going back to fix those shape bugs that I mentioned. I just want to get a good handle on how the math is working, because it'll only get harder, you know?
Yeah.
So we're only going to add to it.
Yes.
So I want to get a good idea of that stuff. You can go to my whiteboard and see all of the, like, I'm trying to figure out how circles work again. Fucking, you know, Pythagorean theorem, etc. The triangle in the circle. The triangle in the circle.
Yeah.
You take the circle, the radius is the thing, and you make it's fuck you. I know what I'm talking about. But that's what I'm doing. What about you?
Man, it's like I'm talking about circles, the Pythagorean theorem, the hypotenuse.
There's triangles and circles.
Yeah, there are triangles and circles. That's
Thank
true.
you, math guy, for confirming.
Yeah, that's true. I'm an idiot. You know that.
Same. What's your priority for the next 2 weeks?
My priority is updating the TypeScript changes for Squish however we need them, including the documentation. I would like to wrap up my Squish work with unit tests in Mocha for it, and then start on web.
Squish work makes me uncomfortable. Don't say that again. Squish work. Girl, make that squish work. That's going to do it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. As always, our music is done by our friend Tynan. He is Nytan on Bandcamp. That is Nytan, Nytan.
I don't like it.
You can reach us on Twitter at HomeGamesIO. We have a website, homegames.io. You can send us questions and whatever using the form at the bottom of the page.
That's right.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
I got it. Finally, I got the 2 weeks.
You did it.
Oh, bye.